So here we go. I'm going to go to share screen. We're continuing our discussion of Kabbalah, and we're getting into actually some of my favorite texts.
Oh, good.
And I hope it isn't, too sort of, whoops, that's not what I wanted to show. You're seeing the wedding again, right? Yeah.
No,
No,
no, we saw it.
Oh,
it was
okay. Hang on,
right.
let me try again. Okay, I was having, yeah, okay. Yeah, I know I needed to, okay.
There we are. Text and
Okay,
more text.
okay, text and more text. And the, uh, you know, it's, whoops. Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So I know this is, not so easy to read, but all of these texts are on my website. If you go to click, on the page with classes and go to Kabbalah.
Mm.
So these are texts. These are from Moses Cordovero, 16th century. And you'll see, I'll pop this up probably at the end of the class, but there's a very good book by Daniel Matt. Daniel Matt is one of the, the
Mhm.
major scholars of Kabbalah. And this is a
Mhm.
pretty small book called The Essential Kabbalah. And he has texts from lots of different sources. And in the back are footnotes, which are very helpful. But I think this, at least for me, sheds some light on this, tremendous mystery, which is the Sephirot. And I find the text wonderful and helpful, but that's me. So I'm gonna read them so I don't have to interrupt you when I want to need to interrupt. When powerful light is concealed and clothed in a garment, it is revealed. Though concealed, the light is actually revealed. For were it not concealed, it could not be revealed. This is like wishing to gaze at the dazzling sun. Its dazzle conceals it, for you cannot look at its overwhelming brilliance. Yet when you conceal it, looking at it through screens, you can see and not be harmed. So it is with emanation. By concealing and clothing itself, it reveals itself.
Mm.
So, and actually, if you think about looking at an eclipse, this is exactly what's going on. If if there's like a partial eclipse of the sun with half the sun showing, or even 10% of the sun showing, if you look up and stare at it, first of all, you can damage your eyes, as we all know, but also it's really too bright to appreciate what's going on. But by looking at it through filters, you can see the corona. I mean, you can see stars. You can see the details. You can see much more. So that is actually a perfect example of how filters, which hide a lot, reveal what's going on. And I think that is what the idea of the Sephirot are, is that we humans cannot connect directly with Ein Sof, directly with the essence of God. It's just too much. So that we have to connect with God through intermediaries or emanations, which are really filters, which there are 10 of them, and we can connect with 10 aspects of God. So just continuing. With the appearance of the light, the universe expanded. With the concealment of the light, the things that exist were created in all their variety. This is the secret of the act of creation. One who understands will understand. So, this actually, I think these are my notes, not even Danny Matt's notes. It's like the Big Bang explosion. So in the early stages, like the first few, I'm not even sure it's an entire second, but the first few milliseconds of the universe existence, the entire universe was a black hole, which is to say, there was so much matter in such a small point that light couldn't escape, because light is affected by gravity. We know this through Einstein and through experiments. And there was so much gravitational force concentrated that light couldn't exist. So if you were at a distant spot, you would see nothing. But with the expansion, the gravitational force is no longer sufficient to contain all the light, and and God says, "Let there be light," and there was light. So that's actually true in physics. And and then it says, with the concealment of light, all things were created in all of their variety. And so basically what happens is that um, you need to have this expansion in order to create matter, because otherwise everything is just elementary particles swimming in a plasma. Um, and this is a phrase I love. One who understands will understand. How many of you know the Yiddish term maven? It's actually in English like this. They was like the herring maven was a commercial. So in Hebrew it's hamavin yavin. The one who is a maven will be a maven. The one who understands. The word maven comes from the word understanding.
Mhm.
Uh, More text. I got lots of text. Oh, first, a very interesting and important principle. And this is why we spend so much time studying Torah and so much time studying texts. There's a concept known as pardes. Um, Pardes in means paradise. I think in Hebrew, but in Greek also, and it's an acronym like NASA, and it stands for the four levels of meaning of every bit of, I would say Torah, but I would say more than Torah, sacred texts. Um, so the Pei in Pardes stands for Pshat, which means the simple meaning of the text. You have Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. It's a story about two people in the Garden of Eden, a talking snake, a fruit, and so on. That's the story. I think I have in one of these texts the comment that the rabbis say it has to be more complicated or deeper than that, because the rabbis are saying we can write better stories than we find in the Torah. We're pretty imaginative. We know how to write good stories. So there's got to be more to it. So the next level is the Resh, which stands for Remez, which means the allegorical meaning of the text. And a good example of that would be, the splitting and the crossing of the sea. So, reflecting on the fact that the Hebrew word for Egypt is Mitzrayim, which means narrow places. So we leave the narrow places and we get through water to the other side. Does that remind you of anything? What would what? It's a birth canal. Okay, it's the birth
Oh,
of the Jewish people.
oh,
We go
wow,
through a
that's
narrow
interesting.
place, we go through waters, and we
Mhm.
escape. Okay, so that's an allegorical meaning
Wow,
of the
that's
text.
very interesting. That's
So, and
interesting.
then the next level is the Dalet in Pardes, which stands for drash, and that is a midrash. A drash means you start with something in the text, and noticing an interesting point in the text, you develop a meaning uh, around it. And my favorite one of that is in the story when Cain murders Abel. God says to Cain, "Where's your brother?" And God says, "I'm sorry, yeah, to Cain, where's your brother?" And Cain says, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" And then God says, "Your brother's blood." It's always translated as in English, "Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground."
Mhm.
Except there's an extra yud in the word blood, and so it is actually in the plural. Your brother's bloods cry out. Now, it could be a scribal error. It could be a drop of ink that fell onto a manuscript at some point. But of course, the rabbis would never say that. So they're saying, why is blood in the plural? And what they're saying is that it's not only Abel's blood that's crying out to God, but all the children that Abel will never have. After all, Cain murders 1/4 of the population of the world in murdering his brother.
Right.
And so from that, in the Talmud, we get the principle that if you save one life, you save an entire world, because you save
Interesting.
not only the person, but all the
Interesting.
descendants. And you may remember the scene from the end of Schindler's List when people are walking by Schindler's grave, and it's not only the people that he saved, but their children and grandchildren,
I see. Right.
because Schindler's action was not only to save those people on his list, but all the descendants who would never have been born had he not saved them. And by the way, the reverse is also taught in the Talmud, that if you take a life, it's as though you take an entire world. So that's drash. okay? And that's in the meaning of that extra letter. And then there's sod, which is the secret meaning. And so when we talked about this a lot in Kabbalah, and the shape of the letter bet points to the left, teaching that all knowledge comes in the Torah. You can't go above the Torah, you can't below the Torah, you can't go to the right of the Torah. So so every bit of Torah can be analyzed in terms of those four levels. And then there's a Torah commentator named Aviva Zonberg, and she had a comment that I really liked. And she said, Pshat is what you tell your therapist, Drash is what your therapist hears, understanding things more deeply than your story.
I do have a question.
Sure.
I'll put up my hand, I guess.
Yeah. No, I mean, here it's only the five of us. You don't have to worry about it. Okay.
All right. I don't have to do that. When the Torah was written, whoever wrote it and how it got written, were these meanings already there? In other words, did they write it and say, this is what it means, or do they write it and say, well, we can figure it out from these letters?
So what I would say is the underlying Jewish assumption is that God is responsible for the Torah's creation.
Yes.
Right? And so the underlying Jewish assumption would be that since God is infinitely deep and infinitely complex, every bit of Torah has more meaning than just the surface meaning.
I see.
Right. If you take it strictly as a human story, you might find meaning there or not. I mean, people study Shakespeare and find different levels of meaning in Shakespeare. Yeah, Farah.
This wedding that we saw is from Reform, from us. But the wedding for the religious people is completely different. Separate man, separate woman. And then how it could be means the same things with us. They have.
I actually don't understand.
You're saying regarding ketubah, yes?
I'm saying what? I'm saying.
Regarding ketubah, marriage, the things that we say, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu. But we are, this wedding that you show is the wedding for reformed people like us. But the wedding for religious people that they think that is original is completely different.
So you're talking about the video that I showed before.
Yes.
These are Sephardim. There's no different movements in Sephardim. So I would say many of those people would consider themselves religious. But it very much, the wedding is influenced by culture. But the wedding ceremony itself that I conduct is pretty standard, very close to an Orthodox wedding.
Okay, thank you.
But how you walk down to the aisle is not dictated by halakha, right?
Right.
Yes.
So the woman could be in a heavy veil and with the two mothers with Havdalah candles. I mean, watch Fiddler on the Roof. But that's Ashkenazi. The Persians want to enjoy themselves and have a great time. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, I showed some videos from a Persian wedding that I conducted this weekend. And let's just say that the procession of some of the women down the aisle would be rated R.
Just so we can look at, just so we can make sure that that's correct. Can you show it again?
No, I don't think I'm going to do that
Okay.
on my YouTube without their permission.
Okay.
But the bride was very quiet and peaceful walking down the aisle. You should know, but not the groom. The groom was, and the father of the groom took off his jacket and threw it into the audience, and it's very, very joyful, and I love it. So, yeah, okay. So sorry, I know these texts may be, depending on the size of your screen, may be difficult to read.
Okay.
But and on the left is the text, and on the right are all the footnotes. So I'm gonna, and this is from the Zohar. There was a man who lived in the mountains. He knew nothing about those who lived in the city. He sowed wheat and ate the kernels raw. Okay. One day he entered the city. They brought him good bread. He said, "What is this for?" They said, "Bread to eat." He ate and it tasted very good. He said, "What is it made of?" And they said, "Wheat." Later they brought him cakes kneaded in oil. He tasted them and said, "What are these made of?" They said, "Wheat." Finally, they brought him royal pastry made with honey and oil. He said, "What are these made of?" They said, "Wheat." He said, "I am the master of all of these because I eat the essence of all of these, wheat." Because of that view, he knew nothing of the delights of the world. They were lost on him. So it is with one who grasps the principle and doesn't know all the delectable delights diverging from that principle. So I want to just highlight some of the footnotes. Um, I'm going to try not to read everything, but basically they're talking about the oral tradition as an addition to the written tradition. So let me just read it. The man from the mountains claims to be a master of wheat, a master of Torah. In rabbinic literature, the phrase master of wheat means one who has mastered the oral traditions. Here in the Zohar, wheat and its products, kernels, bread, cake, and royal pastry, apparently symbolize the 4 levels of meaning in the Torah, the thing we just went over: simple, midrashic, allegorical, and mystical. The mountain man's mastery is superficial. He only knows pshat, the plain sense of the text, and he doesn't know anything about all these other levels of meaning. Just jump down here. He misses the delights reserved for those who savor the variety of flavors, the range of meanings. So basically, what the Zohar is saying is, if you just master the text, but you don't go deeper and deeper and deeper into the text, it's like someone who says, "Oh, wheat, I know about wheat," and he eats the kernels raw, but he never gets to taste bread, cakes, or pastries. Because he says, "Why do I have to taste those things? I can eat the kernels themselves." And so obviously the Zohar is saying how much more wonderful are all of these other elements. And there's another midrashic parallel that Danny Matt talks about. He said there was a king who had 2 servants. He loved them with a complete love. He gave each of them a measure of wheat and a bundle of flax. The wise servant, what did he do? He took the flax and wove it into cloth. He took the wheat and made it into flour. He sifted it, ground it, kneaded it, and baked it. Then he arranged it on the table and spread the cloth over it. He left it until the king arrived. The foolish servant did nothing at all. After some time, the king came to his palace and said, "My children, bring me what I gave you." One brought out the bread in the table covered with cloth. The other brought out the wheat in a box with a bundle of flax on top. When the Blessed Holy One gave the Torah to Israel, he gave it to them as wheat from which to produce bread and flax from which to produce cloth. And so remember, the blessing you say on when you eat bread is Hamotzi Lacha Min Haaretz, the one who brings forth bread from the earth. But God doesn't bring forth bread from the earth. God needs people to make the bread, make the wheat into bread. So these are just texts which are emphasizing the idea that we start with the basic text, but we have to work on them. We have to make beautiful things out of it and not just leave it at the basics. So, for example, Farah, there is nothing in the Torah or the Bible about how to conduct a wedding. There's 0 mention. There's actually text about how you do a divorce, which is kind of interesting, but nothing about how to conduct a wedding. It just says 7 times in the text, it says when a man takes a woman for a wife. So all of the rituals and everything that we do are needing these basic ideas and making them more beautiful.
Wow.
Okay, here is
maybe can I ask one question?
Sure.
Because we're on this subject. Every Friday night when the bar mitzvah person or anybody else who is there, any of the kids who are there, brings out the bread and has a participant have a piece of it. I ask people, what does it mean? Why do they bring out the bread? What is the significance of having bread at a bar mitzvah or after the service? Nobody seems to know. What is it? Why do they have it after the service?
Okay. So there's 2 things going on, actually. One is the Oneg Shabbat.
Yes.
The Hebrew word oneg means delight.
Delight.
So the delight of Shabbat. For Jews, what is a delight? Wonderful thing to eat.
Okay.
Okay. Before you eat anything, you have to say a blessing.
Right.
So for different foods, there are different blessings. But if you eat bread, you say the
Yes.
blessing over bread,
Yes.
and you don't have to say any other blessings, except wine gets its own blessing also.
Oh, I see. Wow.
So by having everyone eat a little, first they say the blessing. Once everyone says the motzi, you're actually obligated to eat bread. Otherwise, it would be a wasted blessing.
I
You're
see.
actually obligated to eat the volume of bread equal to an olive.
I see. Wow. Interesting.
And then once you've said that blessing and eaten a little bit of bread, then you can have grapes, you can have cake,
I
you can
see.
have
Okay.
salami, you can
That
have,
answers the question.
yes,
Yeah.
that's the reason.
Because I was wondering that myself. I said, I don't know. I'll ask this guy. That answers the question. That's great.
Okay. So this is actually my favorite text from the Zohar. And it comes in this phrase, which this is clearly, at least it's clear to me, it's Aramaic. Each day the Torah calls us in love. So this is very much the style of Zohar. Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Yossi met one night in the Tower of Tyre. They stayed there as guests, delighting in each other. Rabbi Yossi said, "I'm so glad to see the face of Shekhinah, for just now the whole way here I was pestered by an old man, a donkey driver, who kept asking me riddles the whole way." So this is now he's going to quote what the donkey driver says. And by the way, I can't remember. I thought I had the notes mingled in. Donkey drivers are considered to be kind of hidden, wise people. But these two great distinguished rabbis are saying, "Oh, now I met another rabbi we can study, and I was pestered by this ignoramus of a donkey driver." So here is the one of the riddles that the donkey driver says. Who is a ravishing maiden without eyes, her body concealed and revealed? She comes out in the morning and is hidden all day. She adorns herself with adornments that are not. All this he asked on the way. I was annoyed. Now I can relax. If we had been together, we would have engaged in words of Torah instead of strange words of chaos. Rabbi Yossi said, of all the words I heard you say, there is one that really amazed me. Either you said it out of folly, or they are empty words. The old man said, what is that? He said, the one about the ravishing maiden. So now this is the old man talking. Human beings are so confused in their minds. They do not see the way of truth in Torah. She calls out to them every day in love. Notice Torah is called a she. Remember, in Hebrew, there is no it. It's either masculine or feminine. The word Torah, since it ends in ah, is feminine. She calls out to them every day in love, but they do not want to turn their heads. She removes a word from her sheath. It is seen for a moment, then quickly hides away. But she does so only for those who know her intimately. A parable. To what can this be prepared? To a beloved, ravishing maiden hidden deep within her palace. She has one lover unknown to anyone, hidden too. Out of love for her, the lover passes by her gate constantly, lifting his eyes to every side. Knowing that her lover hovers about her gate constantly, what does she do? She opens a little window in her hidden palace, revealing her face to her lover, then swiftly withdraws, concealing herself. No one sees him or reflects. No one near him, sees or reflects only the lover, and his heart and his soul and everything within him flow out to her. He knows that out of love for him, she revealed herself that for that one moment to awaken love in him. So it is with the word of Torah. She reveals herself to no one but her lover. Torah knows that the one who is wise of heart hovers about her gate every day. What does she do? She reveals her face to him from the palace, beckoning him with a hint, then swiftly withdraws to her hiding place. No one there knows or reflects. He alone does. And his heart and his soul and everything within him flows out to her. That's why Torah reveals and conceals herself. With love, she approaches her lover to arouse love with him. Come and see the way of Torah. At first, when she begins to reveal herself to a human, she beckons him with a hint. If he perceives, good. If not, she sends him a message, calling him simple. Torah says to her messenger, tell that simple one to come closer so I can talk with him. He approaches. She begins to speak with him from behind a curtain she has drawn so that he can follow until he reflects a little at a time. This is drash. Then she converses with him through a veil, words riddled with allegory. This is Haggadah. Haggadah means story. We have a Haggadah on Pesach. It's more stories.
Mm-hmm.
She says to him, do you see that word, that hint with which I beckoned you at first? So many secrets there, this one and that one. Now he sees that nothing should be added to those words, nothing taken away. Now the pshat of the verse, the basic simple meaning, is just as it is. Not a single word should be added or deleted. Human beings must become aware, pursuing Torah to become her lover. The old man was silent for a moment. The companions were amazed. They didn't know if it was day or night, if they were really there or not. Enough, companions. From now on, you know that the evil side, the Yetzer Hara, has no power over you. I, Yeva Sava, have stood before you to awaken your awareness with these words. They rose as if awakened from a sleep, and they threw themselves down in front of him, unable to utter a word. After a while, they began to cry. Rabbi Chia opened and said, this is a classic form of Midrash. Rabbi Chia Patach opened and said, and then they quote a verse from the Bible. Set me as a seal upon your heart and as a seal upon your arm. It's from the Song of Songs. Love and sparks from the flame of our heart will escort you. May it be the will that our image be engraved in your heart as your image is engraved in ours. He kissed them and blessed them as they left. When they rejoined Rabbi Shimon, remember, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is the hero and the central figure in the Zohar. He is that rabbi walking around the Galilee with a bunch of disciples, just like you know who. When they rejoined Rabbi Shimon and told him everything that happened, he was delighted and amazed. He said, you are so fortunate to have attained all of this. Here you are with a heavenly lion, a fierce warrior, for whom many warriors are nothing, and you could not recognize him. I am amazed that you escaped being punished by him. The Blessed Holy One must have wanted to save you. He called out these verses for them. The path of the righteous is like gleaming light, shining ever brightly until a full day. When you walk, your stride will be free. If you run, you will not stumble, from Proverbs. Your people, all of them righteous, will inherit the land forever. Sprout of my planting, work of my hands, in which I glory. That's
Wow.
the end. Yeah, that's the end of that text. So this is the basic idea is that Torah is like a woman who just slowly reveals her essence, unlike the ladies walking down the aisle that we saw. Slowly reveals the essence, peeks from a window, and those who are her lovers. And if you get into these concepts, you will hear sometimes synagogues are called Ohavei Torah, those who love Torah. If you're the lover of a woman, you're not just going to get to know her outer clothing and garments. I mean, you're going to get to know the essence of her personality, and you're going to get beneath the garments, God willing, and know her more deeply. And there's another phrase, I'm just forgetting the Hebrew. It's the ones who pursue Torah, and that's another phrase you hear a lot: pursuers of Torah.
It's beautiful. That's just beautiful. It's just
it's a wonderful text. Okay, so now we're going to be able to begin discussing Lurianic Kabbalah. I'm just glancing at the time. The soul, angels, and enhancing our Jewish spirituality. And these slides, not my enhanced copies, but a lot of what everything we just read, all these texts are in my in Lotger.com. And at the end, I'm going to send another packet out to everyone, which has it'll probably be a total of 6 sessions. So here's kind of a fun thing I copied when I started teaching about Kabbalah. And here's a guy walking away from the snack bar I guess at a drive-in movie or something, and trips over a banana peel and asks the question, what kind of God would allow this to happen? So we're going to actually look at the answer. So Isaac Luria, a very central figure in the world of Kabbalah and his school. Luria's family was expelled from Spain in 1492. He taught in Svat only 2.5 years before dying in an epidemic in 1572. A fairly young man. I think he was in his 30s when he died. He's called Ha'ari. It's an acronym for the Ashkenazi rabbi Yitzhak. And he wrote almost nothing, but his students recorded his teachings and wrote them down. So this is the story. I'll describe it briefly, and then we'll actually read some text. This is Luria's take on how the universe was created. And basically, what he says is, and we'll see it actually in the text, but he says, at the beginning, the universe was all God and only God. So there was no room for anything else. God decides to create a physical universe. Interesting question. Why does God want a physical universe? My favorite answer is that God likes stories, and God wanted to be in relationship with people. That's the one I like.
That's what I think too.
Another traditional one is, if God is to be praised, there have to be people around to praise God. I'm not so crazy about that explanation. So the idea is God picks a spot and contracts outwardly in a spherically symmetric direction, for those of you who see geometry. And that contraction is called tzimtzum. Very important concept in Kabbalah. And so there's a place where it's still God in that space, but there's room for a physical universe. And then God starts pouring divine light into the space. And I love this image where, we have the other image of the Sephirot, which is kind of in the image of God. It's sort of a right side, a left side, a head, a leg, and so on.
Yes.
This one is where the Sephirot are concentric spheres. So again, I don't know how big this is, but the outer one is Keter, and then there's Chochmah and Bina and Chesed and Gevura and Tiferet and Netzach and Hod and so on. And the idea here is God is pouring divine light through these successive spheres into the space created for the physical universe. And the spheres are called vessels, kelim. Okay. So now we're going to read some text. And this is also from the same book. And again, I apologize for just doing a lot of reading, but this is what Judaism is all about. It's studying text. When the supernal emanator wished to create the material universe, he withdrew its presence. At first, Ein Sof filled everything. Now, still, even an inanimate stone is illuminated by it. Otherwise, the stone could not exist at all. It would disintegrate. The illumination of Ein Sof clothes itself in garment upon garment. At the beginning of creation, when Ein Sof withdrew its presence from all around in every direction, it left a vacuum in the middle, surrounded on all sides by the light of Ein Sof, empty precisely in the middle. The light withdrew like water in a pond displaced by a stone. When a stone is dropped in a pond, the water at that spot doesn't disappear. It merges with the rest of the water. So the withdrawn light converged beyond, and in the middle remained a vacuum. Then all the opacity and density of judgment within the light of Ein Sof, like a drop in the ocean, was extracted. Descending into the vacuum, it transformed into an amorphous mass, surrounded in every direction by the light of Ein Sof. And the word, Aramaic probably, for mass is golem. You remember the story of the golem of Prague.
Yes.
Out of this mass emanated four worlds: emanation, creation, formation, and actualization. And last time we talked about that, the four olamot in Kabbalah. For in its simple desire to create its intention, the emanator re-illumined the mass with a ray of light, withdrawn at first, not all the light because it had returned. Because if it had all returned, the original state would have been restored, which was not the intention. So there's some kind of mass, we would actually say a stone, and we'll see that stone in a moment, which is still illuminated by the divine light. Here's the critical point. To fashion pottery, a potter first takes an unformed mass of clay and puts his hand inside the mass to shape it. So the supernal emanator put its hand into the amorphous mass, that a ray of light returned from above. As this light began to enter the mass, vessels were formed. From the purest light, Keter, next Chochmah, then Bina, and so on through all 10 Sephirot. Since Keter was the purest and clearest of all the vessels, it could bear the light within it. But Chochmah and Bina, although more translucent than those below, were not like Keter. Not having its capacity, their backs broke, and they fell from their position. As the light descended further, 6 points appeared, 6 fragments of what had been 1 point of light. Thus the vessels shattered. Their spiritual essence, the light, ascended back to the mother's womb, while all the shattered vessels fell to the world of creation. So far we have light coming into a vessel. So think about a very high-powered laser. I actually worked back in my physics career with super high-powered lasers, that a pulse of light that had the entire power of all the electricity generation in the United States, lasting for 1 nanosecond, for a billionth of a second.
Ooh.
When it was focused by clear lenses, the light could go through those lenses. But imagine if there was a dark lens in the way. Things are dark in physics because they absorb light. Well, with that much power, they would have exploded. And indeed, in these experiments, if there's a little imperfection in the glass, it shatters. So that's what's being described here, is called shevirat kelim, the shattering of the vessels. When the light emanated once again, regenerated, arrayed anew, it extended only to the world of emanation. Emanation denotes this extension of the light of Ein Sof during the time of regeneration. Emanation consists of 5 visages. These visages are reconfigurations of the point of light, capable now of receiving the light so that no shattering occurs at first. Below the visages of Ein Sof appears only through a screen, as when you sit in the shade, though the sun does not shine on you directly, it illuminates the shaded area. In a similar manner, the light of Ein Sof illuminates the world of creation through a screen indirectly. So basically, my understanding, we'll talk more about this, is that in the act of creation, God pours divine light into creation, and the vessels God created to hold this light shatter. And so then we have the work of repair. We'll talk about this in a moment, of tikkun. And I think I may have mentioned this earlier in one of the classes. I have tried to pin down Kabbalists on the question of, was the shattering deliberate or was it accidental? And I haven't been able to pin them down. So, and I must admit, I've probably read through this 50 times and I still am only beginning to understand it. So, but one of the interesting things is that in Jewish mystical tradition, that stone, that amorphous mass, is called the Even Hashtiyah, which is called the foundation stone. And in tradition, it is the top of the mountain where Abraham brought Isaac to be sacrificed, Mount Moriah. And the tradition understands that it is the rock in the Dome of the Rock. So I don't know if any of you been in the Dome of the Rock? So if you go inside, you see a big rock, big surprise, in the Dome of the Rock. And actually, amazing. And in Muslim tradition, it is from this rock that Muhammad ascended to heaven on a visit to heaven, not when he died, but just on a visit to heaven. And for some reason, I don't know the reason, there is a prayer chamber in the center of the rock. The rock has been hollowed out, and I spent an amazing moment, a truly awesome moment, just standing. Well, I spent hours in here, just being there. But I went when Sonia visited me in my first year as a rabbinic student, we both descended into, which is understood to be the center of the universe, where God created the universe in mystical tradition.
So how do you get there from inside the Dome of the Rock? How
Okay,
do
so you
get
go inside the
that
dome,
chamber down here? Yes, sir.
and there's a staircase. There's the staircase.
Oh, there
And
is. Okay.
yeah, and it's, there's a gate, and I
Okay.
was fortunate the year I was there was very low tension between Jews and Muslims, and
Mhm.
except on Friday, which was the major prayer day in Islam,
Right.
anybody could enter. You take your shoes off, you would be respectful, and
Mhm.
so on. But it was easy to visit. You had to buy tickets to enter. But I've been in there several times.
This picture doesn't show where the entry is to that, does it?
No, but you can
Okay.
probably find it if you look online at the Dome of the Rock.
Okay.
It's amazing to
Interesting.
me, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me that somebody thought about this and wrote it down with all the extra ideas that come with it. Because if you look at all the words you just mentioned, every word has something different about it, different parts of light, different parts of this, different parts of ideas you can see. And it's not, light isn't one thing, it's spread all over the place. And it's amazing at how the words come out and the ideas come out of those words you're reading. It's just amazing.
And it's basically, it's a very careful and deep reading of Torah.
Right.
Because the first thing God creates is light, right? It says, God said, let there be light, and there was light. That's on the first day. It's not till the third or fourth day that the sun and the stars are created.
Wow.
Again, if you just read the opening chapter of Genesis. So then there's a whole bunch of speculation. What was the light before sun and stars? So
Right.
that's going to lead the mystics to develop these ideas.
I'll have to tell you one experience I had, must have been a year or two ago, when I was called up to the Torah, and I was reading from the Torah. I wasn't reading, I was just reading the before and after of the Torah.
The blessings, right?
And I said out loud, the Torah looks like it's on fire to me. The words, the letters look like they're on fire.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know quite where that came from, but I had an idea, a feeling inside my body that it was a glow. There was a glowing of the Torah.
Yeah, well, there is a tradition that Torah is black fire on white fire.
Yes, I came
It's a
out, and I
mystical
didn't even
tradition.
realize I was
Yep.
going to say it. It just came out.
Yep. Great observation. Okay, so I want to continue with this idea of Lurianic Kabbalah, the breaking of the vessels and the release of divine sparks. The result is that there's lots of broken vessels in the world. There are shards of vessels. And the tradition is each time a Jew does a mitzvah, that a little bit of the universe is healed. So that's why the Chabadniks will stand on street corners in Jerusalem asking men to put on tefillin and women to light candles, because my act of putting on tefillin, your act of putting on tefillin, heals one of those vessels, and nobody else can heal that particular piece. We'll talk more about this in a minute. So, and of course, it's very Jewish centric, because it's only the Jews doing mitzvah that heals the universe and repairs these shards. So, Tikkun Olam and the Messiah. I would say perhaps the most astonishing insight of Kabbalah is that God cannot repair the universe without our help. I would say, different people that I'll talk to about this will be astounded by the idea that God can't do it, that it is left to people to do it. The repair of the universe is called Tikkun Olam, and it is a centerpiece of Reform tradition, where it's really equated with, political action and feeding the hungry and making peace and doing those kinds of things. But in Kabbalah, it's also putting on tefillin, and it's lighting Shabbat candles, and and doing all the ritual thing. Thus, our efforts as God's partner are required to bring about the Messiah and redemption. And I love to think about this as a jigsaw puzzle. And each of us, I read this one of probably Larry Kushner. I think he actually, even one of the texts I have says each of us has a piece of that puzzle to play. And if we don't play our particular piece of the puzzle, then who knows how many thousands of years it may be before someone else comes along and has that piece of the puzzle to repair and to help create the overall picture. Another author who I really like, Naomi Rems, I think, talks about the idea. She said when she was a kid, I think she said it was her, she found a piece, her parents would do jigsaw puzzles. And there was one little piece of the puzzle that looked like a person, and it was dark, and it frightened her, so she hid it. Okay, you can imagine how popular that was in the family trying to do the puzzle. And she was afraid of it. And then she said the family asked about it, and she mentioned that she hid it. And when they took it out and put it in the picture, she realized it wasn't frightening at all, but it was part of the picture. So I think that's sort of another element that works here.
Yes.
And of course, there's another reflection of this in a book by Abraham Joshua Heschel, shown here walking with Martin Luther King, which is called God in Search of Man, a philosophy of Judaism. So this is the essence of the idea that God needs humanity. A few more slides. Just see where we are on this 88. I'm wondering whether to get into soul. Let's just do the soul stuff, and then we will take it from there. So more texts, sorry.
No, that's good. It's
okay.
The
So now this is from another wonderful book, I would say much more readable and understandable, called Does the Soul Survive? By Rabbi Eli Kaplan Spitz. I know this rabbi. He's a conservative rabbi in Southern California. And basically it says a Jewish journey to belief in the afterlife, past lives, and living with purpose. So he has a lot of great texts in here. So actually this is from a different book, but well, no, I guess, no, I'm just copying it from this book. So soul is a popular term in the current American culture. Recent titles of best-selling books offer soul chicken soup and care, and claim descriptions of the soul's fire, seat, and code. At the same time, these works offer scant definition of soul. Soul is commonly used as a term for an inner component that survives the physical plane. It is also used to describe an inner force that serves as the font of who we are, or a quality or dimension of experiencing life or ourselves, with depth, value, relatedness, heart, and personal substance. Soul's definitions are multifaceted and elusive because it is not an object. I hope to find in Jewish text a more nuanced analysis of the nature of soul. Although there are a variety of understandings of soul in the Jewish tradition, the common starting point is that soul is no less than an extension of God. In the crafting of Adam, the Torah says God formed Adam out of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the neshama of life, and Adam thus became a living creature. In Hebrew, there are three terms used for breath: nefesh, ruach, and neshama, or neshama. The words that in Jewish mystical tradition are also used to describe facets of the soul. The image of breath conveys the idea that a soul is intangible, animates life, and links us to the source of creation. The rabbis of the Babylonian Talmud elaborated on the link between soul and source as follows: as God fills the whole world, so the soul fills the whole body. As God sees but cannot be seen, so the soul sees but cannot be seen. As God nourishes the whole world, so also does the soul nourish the whole body. As God is pure, so also the soul is pure. As God dwells in the innermost part of the universe, so also the soul dwells in the innermost part of the body. Characterizing soul as an extension of God helps me appreciate why the soul is so hard to define. God is other, neither object nor person. To experience God and soul entails some detachment from our own self-involvement, our I. The image of the soul as breath helps convey a paradox. Although we don't normally see our breath, if we take a mirror, breathe in deeply and exhale, we can see our breath as a film on the mirror. The more breath we see, the less reflection we see of ourselves. To define objects is to grasp them with our senses, which requires an awareness of ourselves. The more fully we encounter soul, the more our I of self-awareness and attachment recedes. We engage soul with the aid of our imagination. Imagination is also the vehicle for finding metaphors to describe our soul experiences. And that, like Dr. Peter Pitzela, a master psychodramatist and author of Our Father's Wells, points out that even before God created Adam, God said, "Let us make Adam in our image and our likeness." On this phrase, Pitzela comments, "Here we see the poet at work. Elohim, the image maker, creates through imagination. Adam, the first creation, resembles the creator, for the human creature is endowed with a divine spark made in the image of the imaginer and emanation."
Mhm.
Imagination enables us to enter the realm between understanding and the unconscious, where tradition teaches that our soul is accessed. I'm just going to read it. We'll go over a little bit. The flame is an image that the Zohar, the classic mystical commentary on the Torah, composed by the end of the 13th century, uses to express the multifaceted nature of soul. I find this image particularly helpful. Soul, as divine spark, possesses qualities of light. It is pure, dynamic, and the tool of awareness, which enables enlightenment. In addition, the bands of color in a flame, ranging from blue to orange to yellow, convey that the soul, too, is composed of nestled complementary qualities. The Zohar describes three dimensions of soul. Let's see what this is. Three dimensions of soul. Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, the same three words for breath, and correlates them with facets of inner human existence. On a more cosmic level, it describes them as separate realms of creation. Understanding Judaism's approach to the soul requires an examination of these three dimensions of soul, as described in the Zohar. Remember, the name of his book is Does the Soul Survive? And the understanding is the soul survives your death and either stays in heaven waiting for the coming of the Messiah, in which case your soul is reconstituted with your body in resurrection, or the Kabbalah more embraces the idea of reincarnation. So the soul is a very important subject. So that's why I'm spending time on it. Soul at the most primary level of human existence is called nefesh, representing the realm of action and physical pleasure. Our bodies are the foundation of our lives, and we are fundamentally physical beings. With our bodies, we act in the world. At the next level, nefesh supports and connects with ruach, the realm of feelings which enable personality and the expression of love. Animals too have a body and feelings and thus have soul, but one that is limited to the lower dimensions of soul possibility. With neshama, the third level of the soul, we evidence uniquely human capacities. The neshama is identified with analytic thought, the quest for meaning and transcendence. Only humans ask, so we surmise, what is the significance of my life? This capacity for self-reflection and awareness is our link to God and is identified as the breath of life, nishmat chaim, that God uniquely breathes into Adam in Genesis. In traditional mystical writings, soul is often called by the term neshama, because it is that part of the personality most identified with self-identity and transpersonal relationships. As we will see, neshama is also that dimension of soul most identified with soul survival and reincarnation. Isaac Luria was the most influential teacher of Jewish mysticism, with the possible exception of the author of the Zohar, Moshe de Leon. He identified two more realms of the soul. Three aren't enough. We need two more. Chaya and Yechida, which are often grouped together as a fourth dimension of creation. These two higher spheres are accessed by intuition or disciplined imagination and might be called spirit, as distinguished from soul, because of their intrinsic link to the divine. Luria returned to the image of breath to describe the five interrelated but distinct units of soul, using the metaphor of God as glassblower. This I love, this image of God as glassblower. To blow glass requires the glassblower to breathe in deeply, get a breath, and then exhale through the glass tube. As the breath moves through the glass, it expands and shapes it. Everybody with me on what a glassblower does? Okay. When the work is completed, the breath rests on the glass. So in reverse order, the breath on the glass is nefesh, the most basic level of life force present in all living things. So the breath on the glass that pushed the glass into its shape corresponds to nefesh. The ruach, which means wind, is the force that blows through the glass, giving it its shape. So the ruach is the breath going through the tube, ultimately, which is going to wind up on the surface of the glass. The neshama is the outward breath of the glass blower. So that's the breath leaving God's lips to go into the tube, okay?
Right.
And then the chaya is the inward breath of the glass blower. So this is God inhaling before exhaling is still a deeper level of soul. And the yechida is the soul of the glass blower, the soul of God. These dimensions of soul are intertwined and continuous. For Luria, the three lower facets of soul were identified with the personality of the individual. The upper two, spirit, were extensions of God and hence universal. In Hasidism, the three lower levels of soul were given more of a psycho-spiritual developmental emphasis. The Maggid of Mezerich, Dov Ber, the chief disciple of the founder of Hasidism, the Baal Shem Tov, taught in the 18th century that the levels of soul were acquired in stages. And I know this is too small for you to read. It's almost too small for me to read. When a man is born, he only has an animal soul, the nefesh. When he overcomes his evil urge, physical compulsions, such as craving for food and sex, the person is given a ruach. So this is a developmental sense of, as the person develops, they acquire deeper levels of soul. The entire world of angels is then in his domain. If the person is even more worthy, then he learns to master his emotions, such as anger. He's given a neshama, corresponding to the divine throne. That means that his every intent and thought creates a throne for God. When a person at this level thinks about his love for God, he is placed in the universe of love. Such a person must never remove his thoughts from God, even for an instant, because God himself rests on his thoughts. In this Hasidic description, soul development moves in stages and is a lifelong pursuit. How we live our lives and our level of awareness determine which rungs of the soul are most profoundly engaged. In Jewish mystical tradition, therefore, soul is identified with more than a spiritual dimension. Soul encompasses all aspects of our inner lives as manifest in our daily human activities. When our deeds are linked to an inner core, we are acting in a way we would call soulful or authentic. Yeah, so I think I'm going to leave that here and stop sharing because we're running a little
so
over.
interesting.
We'll get into this idea of being God's shadow, and hopefully we'll complete the class next time. So,
It's beautiful. It's
sorry
just
for all that reading. My voice was starting to go. Any thoughts, questions, comments?
Yeah, I think I see it as just beautiful. I understand what's going on and all the different levels. It has to do with the reading of the Omer too at this point in time about what
Yeah,
is
I
going
didn't get
on.
into it, but the counting of the Omer is 49 days. It's a 7 by 7
Right,
matrix,
that I know,
and the
but
mystics talk about the seven lower
that's
sephirot.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. But the idea of what's going on in what you're saying is reflected in the Omer, because what the Omer teaches the Jews that were walking from Egypt out to Mount Sinai, they had to learn all kind of things from they had to be taught. They didn't know anything about Judaism. They were sort of stuck. So they had to be taught, and they had to have ideas given to them. And now what's
Yeah,
happening where,
that's an interesting take. I mean, as I think about it historically,
yes,
these are newly freed slaves,
that's right.
and you're absolutely right, they know very little.
That's right.
And in fact, the details of the covenant hadn't been revealed to anyone yet.
That's right.
So it's only at Shavuot, when Moses
Right.
ascends to Sinai,
That's right.
that the Torah is given,
That's
and
right.
now there's a lot more to know.
That's exactly right.
But the interesting thing is they know they were Jews,
Yes.
and they had a sense of this. And I actually had a very practical experience of this back when I was, a temple near Ami. I remember we had a family, maybe even one or two families, that were Russian immigrants that had gotten out of Russia, and they were Jewish. But because it was forbidden to teach Judaism, they knew absolutely nothing about
Nothing.
Judaism.
Exactly.
And their kids were being enrolled in Bar Bat Mitzvah, and they had zero experience.
Right.
So they took
Exactly.
this classes. We actually taught a set of
That's right.
classes for them to learn. So you're very, very true.
And one of the last things that happened today in the Omer was that the people who are becoming the leaders of all the people who are coming out of Egypt have to be taught what to do. They can't just yell at the other Jews that are coming through. They have to be taught how to be a good, compassionate person. They have to learn that. And that's hard to learn, because when they're coming out of Egypt, they're like animals. They don't know what to do, what to believe, how to believe, what they're supposed to be doing, what they're not supposed to be doing. So over the time that they're coming out of Egypt, the Omer is being carried, and there's lessons being taught to the Jews as they walk.
Yeah, so I would just point out that the Omer in the Torah is simply a requirement to offer a sheaf of wheat
That's right.
between Pesach and Shavuot.
That's
So
right.
this idea that it actually represented the time getting there, that's a rabbinic addition. So all of
It
these
could be.
insights are later insights as we're looking for deeper and deeper meanings going on.
That's right. I just want to read one sentence to you out of this. It's called the Omer. I got this little book. It's
Can't see the book because you have
reading of the Omer.
Yeah.
It's this little book. I bought it, and I just want to read one sentence. It's called Harmony. Harmony is critical for successful leadership. Do I manage a smooth running operation? Am I organized? Do I give clear instructions to my subordinates? Do I have difficulty delegating power? Does my organization work as a team? Do we have frequent staff meetings to coordinate our goals and efforts? So what's happening is, near the end of reading the Omer, they're getting near the end now. So you have to give the Jews that are coming out something to hang on to, because they have to have these skills to organize their groups. Because they didn't, they'd act like animals. They have to have some kind of teaching. And
Well,
that's
and
what
then
the
and the
Omer is
bottom
giving
line
them.
is even after Sinai, Moses is one day late and they build
Right,
a
and they
golden
fall
calf.
apart. I know.
So they're not allowed to enter the promised land.
They're not.
Even
But
even Moses is not.
I know. But they were
Yeah.
given this instruction. And how many times do you go in a classroom, and you have the same thing over and over again because you need to learn it? The
Yep.
teacher teaches you one time, and then, well, let's have a test. Well, look at all these students who don't know it. We'll give them more instruction, and they have to learn it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because if they don't, they just will they won't know how to operate in the world. That's what you have to have. That's what this
Okay.
is about. That's what I think the Omer is about. It's not just the shafts going from the wheat going from here to there. It's about
Okay.
giving them ideas.
Nice insight. Anybody else have any thoughts? Yeah, go ahead, Farah.
You said that God put the life from the nose to the people person.
God breathed the breath of life into Adam.
But what about the animal? How they have soul also. They have many things that we have. So what about them? And they were made before. First, God made the animal, and then Adam and Eve. So what about them?
Yeah. So I would say the Torah clearly understands a fundamental difference between humans and other animals, because all the animals are created, each with its mate. You can go back and read Genesis on the first, actually, even up to the 6 days, God is creating animals and the fish of the sea and so on and so on. And it doesn't say anything about breathing the breath of life into them. So clearly, human creation is a distinct creation from the other animals. And what I would say, the text that we just read, is that animals have souls, but at a lower level than human souls. And the human souls have more of a bit of a divine. And God says, let us create humanity in our image. And one modern understanding that I really like is God was talking to the animals. So we humans are created in the image of animals. We have to do all the same things that animals do. We have to eat. We have to eliminate waste. We have to have sex to reproduce, and so on. That's our animal nature. But we also have a divine nature.
Right.
We puzzle over the question, why are we here? Presumably my cat doesn't wonder why it's here, or contemplate the future, or wanting to make the world better for its children and grandchildren. So humans have a different level of souls than animals. And Chabad, one of the things I have to say I'm not crazy about with Chabad is they also say that Jews have a higher level of souls than non-Jews. I'm not. I'm just saying
I don't know about that one.
That's in the Tanya.
Not true. That's not
I don't
true.
know about that one.
You say it's not true of Chabad, or it's not true that people have that Jews have a higher level of soul.
It's not true that Jews have the higher level.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But anyway, but the people talk about having a Jewish soul. So there's something that connects us as a people, in deep in our nature. And so I would say that idea of having a Jewish soul, or a sense of being part of the Jewish people, is an inherent part of Judaism.
That's what I think also. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop recording, and